and welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I'm your host, Jess Dewell. Thank you so much for joining us today live on the radio show. You know, one of the conversations that keeps coming up over and over again for me, which means there's something for me to learn here, and there's a lot for me to listen here, and there's even more for me to go searching for information. And it's about learning. It's about, when do we shut up? When do we open our mouths? Where does that learning occur? And it's really a crux that we face, that concept of how much do we put on mastery and how much do we want these immediate results? And especially today, we have this struggle. I was going to say a power struggle. It's really not a power struggle. It's just a struggle between instant gratification and immediate results. And then on the other side, this concept of living and mastery of living. And what does that actually look like? So we all have the same amount of time in a day. And today we are talking with Dr. Richard Liposky, and he is the president and CEO of Dental Specialists of America, LLC. He provides outpatient oral and maxillofacial surgery and specialty services to group practices across 8 states. I mean, seriously, okay? This is near and dear to my heart on many levels. Not only is he a really cool guy, having dental issues, and you guys know about them if you've listened to the show for a while, I'm very upfront about the importance of dental hygiene and just what we're born with and how do we make the most of what we've got there. You know, he also, Dr. Liposky, hosted the radio show Speaking of Dentistry. And he brings more than 50 years of business experience with him today to talk to us. He has the privilege of coaching new physicians, dentists, and businessmen and women, both starting and developing, as well as growing their businesses and practices. You will get to meet him right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Yay! Okay, so this is the Voice of Bold Business. And Dr. Liposky, how are you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Good. Tell us, it's the middle of the day. It's like around just after lunchtime or right before lunchtime for you. Do you start your day with a cup of coffee or any sort of special morning routine that's instrumental in getting you up and getting you going?
No, actually, it's maybe a cup of coffee. Don't have too much breakfast. I'm a fond lover of donut holes. I figure they're less than a whole donut, so therefore I can eat more donut holes. But no, it's kind of funny because when I was doing major surgery, I would start at 6 o'clock in the morning, make rounds, and then grab a quick breakfast at the hospital. But then you're in surgery from 7:30, 8 o'clock until 5, 6 at night, and it would just be like one case. The cases lasted that long, so you sort of get used to having that one meal a day, which was at the end of the day. And that's the way I do it today. It's probably not the healthiest way to do it, but it's the way that works efficiently for me. So yes, I am a proponent of donut holes and my 1 cup of coffee and entertaining myself. By the way, you said I had 50 years of business experience. Think about that, because I was 2 when I got started. But, it's been a while. Yeah.
And okay, so everybody who is listening, we will link to these in the show notes because they are, not only are they great reads, you already see Dr. Liposky's sense of humor. He's written 2 books. It's Not What I Know, It's How I Learned It, and Grandpa and Andy. And I have to tell you, I'm in the middle of reading both, in not only for preparation of this show, but because I will be honest, Dr. Liposky, I have no idea where I came across you. And I know I just randomly reached out and I said, I think you and I have some things we could talk about. Yeah. So I'm enjoying these books because you tell, even in the business book, the way we communicate is so important. And the way we look at the world and actually take a second, and I can't say we, I must say you in this case, you take a second to really understand where is the person who's asking me this question? Or where is this person who has just said this thing to me? Where are they at and where are they coming from? And you're adding this extra level of perspective. And, it makes me think about communication. And more than ever before, we need communication in today's world. So what is there a time or a story or just when you realized you had been able to flip and go, it's no longer about what I'm doing and what I have to give or what I think they want. It's I really need to figure out what the person who's talking to me wants.
Right. It's, I guess you think in terms of learning to react or respond, and the same influence upon you. You have a choice. You can react and respond. If I felt something sharp on my shoulder, I might react and slap my shoulder thinking it was a bee, but it might be a penicillin shot that's going to save my life, you see. So it's the same insult on my shoulder, but you learn to react and respond. And I've gone through that. I'm not perfect in any way, but I've learned, and I've been the ugly American at certain times in my career. In the service, I remember, when I was in Honduras, I saw people. I was flying over a mountain, and I saw a gentleman waving to me at the top of the mountain. And I was in a helicopter and I was on a mission, and I said to the pilot, I said, hey, how does that guy get to the top of the mountain? And he said, I don't know. I said, because we had been circling trying to get over this mountain. As we went over the other side, we found that there was a very narrow path to get to the top of the mountain. And I said, well, how does he get any help? I mean, it would take him a half an hour to 45 minutes to get down the mountain, and yet he lived on the top. And as we flew closer to the side of the mountain and among the trees, we could see little huts here and there. Now, these were people that their whole life was there. And I might complain about a pothole on the road, or I might complain about the berm not being trimmed. But these people were just happy to have a road, you see. So sometimes, when we look at things through our eyes, we're missing the point as to what is really before us. And as I say, my experiences with people, I guess I just have to always think about their agenda and what's in their heart. And sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't, but at least you try. And I think if you try to see people through their eyes, sometimes it'll make communication a lot better.
And it's in that switching, that taking the time to go, oh, they might have a different agenda than I do. And I mean, holy cow. And sometimes the different agenda, it comes down to, you were talking about the assault on your shoulder from a penicillin shot, right? It's like, well, where did that come from? Oh, wait, I can rationalize that. But when it's a bee sting, it's like, where did that come from? I can rationalize it, but it's that one I can't get over. And then I get this little bit of a, and there's a fear then around bees maybe. And when we're talking and thinking about this in terms of communication, when we have a bad experience or we're unable to put it into our own life experience and we don't have people around us, which one of my goals in this world during this life is to change that. Everybody has somebody that can listen to them. That would be a really good goal, right? But they don't have that. So they learn to be fearful in their communication, which shuts us down instead of helps us have that second or third perspective. And in those cases where you've encountered people who have shut down, if you were able to tell them anything, knowing in that moment they were probably unable to hear anyway, but if we're thinking about it and we're like, oh yeah, we're acting from a place of fear instead of a place of receptiveness or responding, as you were saying earlier, what advice would you give us around that? How could we begin that small change?
We have you have to understand about fear. Fear, the acronym is false evidence appearing real. Because you weren't born afraid of most of the things that we're afraid of. And the baby maybe is afraid of loud noises and of falling, but they're not afraid of the dentist, and they're not afraid of heights yet, and they're not afraid of public speaking. When you become an adult, they say, well, the fear of public speaking is one of the major events that, we're afraid of. But those are learned fears, and anything that you can learn, you can unlearn, or you can learn to deal with it. You see, so when I've done surgical procedures using clinical hypnosis, and you say, well, wait, you didn't numb that person, you didn't use anesthesia. No, because anesthesia in those cases, might not have been the best thing for them. But I had to, once I was able to talk to them and they were able to listen to me, you can get them through that painful situation. The pain stimuli are still there, but you see, the brain did not accept those pains. How can a person, when I was doing surgery in Central America for the Contras, it took them 21 days to get out of Nicaragua and get across the Coco River into Honduras, where we could do the surgery for them. But they would come to us with portions of their legs or their arms missing. How did that happen? Well, they took it off. Well, they didn't have anesthesia. How did they do that? Well, you can actually control these elements in your brain. And a lot of that is the decision. Some people maybe just need a hug. Some people just need to know that you're walking with them instead of standing in front of them. And once they understand that you're on their side, that you're walking with them, that's the entree to start to help them understand their situation. But until they see you as an obstacle, you're not gonna be able to help them. And I tell patients all the time, give me a chance to help you. But if you come to me afraid and with all kind of anxieties in front of you, then I have to overcome all those things. So let's sit on the same side of the chair, same side of the table, and let's see if we can accomplish that. And that's applicable not only in life, it's in business and all the different things you try to do.
That's true. So it's taking the time to stop
Yeah.
and really assessing is what I heard you say. I mean, I love that. Okay, I don't even know if they're still teaching this in school, but when I was a kid, they taught you stop, drop, and roll, right?
Yeah.
So if you end up accidentally on fire, and this was definitely a Girl Scout thing, and I know I learned it in school too, it was stop, drop, and roll. You gotta act, gotta do that. But that first step is to stop, recognize there's something else that comes after stop.
See that now? See, that's where I have a trouble with that, because I thought it was rock and roll, and that's
Oh.
how I get out. So I guess I would have ran around with my pants on fire because I was singing a song. So
Oh, you keep bringing up this idea of singing. I'm loving this. I have to tell you.
I can. Don't ask. No, I'm not going to sing. That's right.
I know. I was not going to ask at all. I was not going to ask. What I was going to say was, you said this very important word, decision. This decision, and then we were talking about stopping. It's hard sometimes to make the decision and to actually slow down enough to realize a decision has been made. And we were talking, there are split decisions and then there are thoughtful decisions. So if we're talking on the side of, these split second decisions that have to occur, how do you know you're making the right choice in those split second decisions when you're like in reaction mode? You're like, oh my gosh, here I am in some sort of crisis. And you've been in more crisis than I think I have so far, and I may ever experience. So I'm like,
I won't wish them on you either. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're talking about reacting and responding. Okay.
Mhm.
And the quality of your reaction, your first response, which is a
Mhm.
reaction, the quality of that or the effectiveness of it will be based on the information that you know at the time, plus all the information you have in over time, what you've learned in the past. I can when I let's say to this day, if I hear a helicopter coming in, I can tell what kind of helicopter it is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a period in my life where it was imperative that you knew what those sounds were. Same thing with different bangs and different sounds of a gun or whatever, you know, and so when I was in those areas and those sounds occurred, I knew what I had to do at that particular moment. I reacted. Fast forward now back, and now I come stateside, and now I'm home, and I hear a backfire of a car. I don't know yet. I haven't processed the backfire of a car yet. So now I'm I'm moving into the reactive mode of taking cover. You see?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So it's a reaction, but it was based on the information I had up until that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how, whether you're in let's talk, if you're in business, you know, you make decisions in business that affect you going forward in your business. We call it just a business decision. However, the the efficacy of that decision is based on what you know up until the time that you're forced to make that decision.
Yes.
So it gets back to what you said at the very beginning about learning. You know, one of the pitches that I make all the time is you always got to keep learning. You always got to stay in the learning mode. The most successful businessmen are reading books constantly. They're constantly learning. And unsuccessful business people are the ones who think that they know everything, you know, and you don't. I think it might be in one of my books I wrote. I said, when you think you know, you probably don't. And when you think you know everything, you don't. And when you know everything, that's probably the time to sit down, shut up, and listen. You see, so
Yes.
you know, I encourage people to read, study, learn all the time. You know, it's like, how old do you have to be that you can quit learning? You know, would you tell your kids, okay, you're 18 years old, you know everything you know for the rest of your life? We don't find out half the things we don't know until we're 21 or 25 or maybe 50. You know, so
Right.
you gotta stay in that learning mode all the time.
So, what I heard you say, if I were to pull something out to dig a little deeper, it is that we may be responding and reacting immediately. Actually, I'm going to take it back. I want to take out respond. We may be reacting immediately because of past experience. And if we're in a business, and this goes for life too, and we only feel like we're fighting fires all day long, and we're just reacting, 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 reacting. That's the time to stop,
Oh
because
yeah,
something else must occur for change and growth to see the results that we're trying to get to by fighting all these fires all the time.
it's always a good idea to find out what caused the fire, right?
Yes.
If
Yes.
not, if you don't figure out the cause of the fire, you're going to be fighting fires all the time. And
Hmm.
so in business, you know, you look at it could be in the HR department, it could be in the sales department, marketing, it could be climate. I don't care what it is, but it could be anything out there. You see, but you got to go after the source. The most frustrating thing I think one of the frustrating things in business is what you just said, putting out fires all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you keep putting out fires? You know, can you imagine if you every Monday morning you called the fire department to your house? You know, about the third Monday, they'd say, you know, we got to have a long talk because
Exactly.
you better learn how to cook. You know, so find out what's causing and that's when you stop and you look at the situation and you say, okay,
Mhm.
why are we in these situations?
Okay, and I'm going to bring this up, and if I bring something up and you want to change the subject, please know this is totally fine. One of the things that I pulled out of the stories that you told
Mm,
was that the sometimes efficiency trumps the ideal or correct way to do something in business, right? And I'm thinking about the story where you were talking about people coming in because they have chipped teeth or broken teeth. And what was the easiest way to do? Root canals took too long. So they just pulled the teeth out, right?
that was a
Um,
military way, yeah.
but yeah. And so I'm bringing this story up because, well, one, I love this. I was like, oh, teeth, this makes a lot of sense. It's going to stick with me. And two, you stopped and said, there's got to be a way we can save some of these people's teeth, because the after options were not as good to them either. And that's what you did. You took a step back and you said, hey, there might be something different if I ask a few questions, if I figure out where the efficiencies there. So how do we work with the efficiencies
Yeah.
and still get a better outcome? And you did that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's progress, and you're right. We were in the military, because that was the buildup during the war, and they were trying to, you know, get these young men ready to deploy, and the procedures that they needed. A lot of them had never been to the dentist in years, so um, we had to get them out, and the traditional way of doing things would require 4 to 5 dental appointments, and we figured a way that we could do even a better job for them in one appointment. But it really was a paradigm shift. But I thought about that in our conversations, that you don't want people in your company who always are changing things for the sake of change. You
Right.
want but you don't want to paralyze creativity in your company. So you want people to sort of think out of the box, but they have to understand that their thinking out of the box may not be the only way to do things. And so you bring those ideas together, you massage those ideas, analyze them, and then pick the best ideas to move forward. But that was a paradigm change in the military, and once it got accepted, once we had some cases under our belt and they were successful, then we got other doctors to try. And first thing you know, they said, this is the best thing since buttermilk. And that's why you don't have buttermilk in the service now. So
Oh, I was going to say, so you stopped and you rock and rolled.
That's oral surgery humor. Okay, so.
Yeah. I tell you what, Dr. Liposky, it's really interesting because you bring up such another great point. It's almost like you're in my brain and you're going where I want to go next before I get there. And this is perfect because you were talking about this concept of a space for creativity, yet not being changing just because. And it's interesting because it comes back down to this crux, this time thing. We all have 24 hours in a day. Every business has the assets and the people and the ideas and the experience that everybody comes together and brings.
Yeah.
Yet we get stuck in this concept of instant gratification. And when we look for those immediate results without taking time to massage and develop any ideas, we end up with ideas that don't work, or they're short-lived, or people get burnt out because nothing ever actually comes to fruition. All these ideas come and they get developed, yet they're missing key information because nobody helped build the idea from other areas. I mean, it's pretty amazing, what we see. So something that you did successfully in the military with that was called disruption. You disrupted the process, and you even said it. You said it was like an innovation. It was the next thing to do. And we're all looking for the next thing to do. So sometimes there's not a decision to make first. There's actually, what is that root cause? What's that? The root. Anyway, the problem. What are we trying to solve, and how do we actually know that's the problem we're trying to solve? Is it actually the cause of the fire, if you will?
Well, it's interesting. The metaphor or example I give is, what would people think if they saw me sitting in my garden with vinegar and oil, and they said, "What are you doing, Doc?" And I say, "Well, I planted tomatoes yesterday, and I'm waiting for a tomato to pop up." Most people would say, "That's kind of dumb, Doc. You got to let the tomato grow, right? So it got to get it got to get air, it got to get sunlight, it got to get all the nourishments." And a tomato is not going to pop up in one day. And it's no different than if I want to accomplish something because I have an idea. I don't have the idea today, and tomorrow it's there, the fruits of it. So ideas, whether it's in a business or in an innovation or whatever, they have to be grown. They have to be massaged. All the elements have to come together to bring that idea into fruition. And You know, if you read the history of the Wright brothers, and how many failures they had, you think, well, gee whiz, why didn't they give up? Well, they had that vision, they had that idea, you see. And even when they at Kitty Hawk, when they did their flight, there were people out there who said, "Oh, that ain't gonna work," right?
Yeah.
But it worked. And
Mhm.
today we take flight as just part of life. I mean, so
That's right.
the idea is, and I encourage people to come up with ideas, but they have to understand, just because they have an idea doesn't mean that they're going to get a check in the mail for $1 million. There's a lot that goes between the idea and its fruition, it's coming to pass. And once they understand that, then they'll move from the creative phase into the phase of developing their idea, you see, and putting all the elements together to make it come to pass.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and holy moly, there is nothing but wisdom here today as we're talking to Dr. Liposky about what we can do and getting results today and still building our tomorrow, honing those business skills, learning from every experience to draw on in the future. And I want to know, Dr. Liposky, how do we learn? Have you figured that one out yet?
Well, you learn every day. You learn I'm learning right now. Matter of fact, I really didn't even have to call my grandkids to turn the computer on, and I'm making progress. My kids, they come to my house, and then they're 3 miles down the road, and I'm calling them, asking them how to turn on my smart TV. And I'm thinking, if it's a smart TV, it should be able to turn on itself, right? But
Right.
they know. So I'm learning every day.
Cheers to that. Me too. And that's actually one of the reasons that I decided the Voice of Bold Business would be useful, because we all need a chance to learn. And I know there's still so much more that I want to learn. And okay, do we have a choice? Could we go through every day and take it what it is and basically clock in and clock out of our life? When we wake up, we clock in, and when we go to bed at night, we're clocking out, and we stop there. And by clocking in and out, I'm talking about this concept of, I've got these obligations, I've got this life, I've made these choices, so I got to do what I got to do, and that's all the time I've got. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's a choice, isn't it?
it is, but when I talk to people, some people will say, "But Dr. LaPaz, you don't understand my circumstances." Everybody has circumstances. And you made a statement before, you said, we all have 24/7, 24 days a week, 7 days a week. So it's what you do with your discretionary time that makes the difference between success and failure. In other words, if there are some people that their discretionary time, they focus on reading. Some people focus on playing the piano. Some people focus on watching TV. Whatever you do with your discretionary time will make the difference in the success levels or the achievements of your life. Eating, sleeping, that's survival mode. Working in your job, that's part of the non-discretionary time. But if you're working in your job and you're spending 8 hours there and an hour each way commuting, if you only have 1 hour a day that you can read or you can do something to grow, that 1 hour a day makes the difference in your life. And when you talk to successful people, you find out that they're the ones that manage their discretionary time. And you look at them and say, how can you have discretionary time? Discretionary time is a decision. 24/7, we all have it. Here's a stat: 85% of the population do not read one book a year.
85% of our population?
Do not read one book a year.
Holy
Okay?
cow.
Now, so then we have 15% that read one book a year. Okay? So then there's a very small percentage that read more books a year. Okay? Now if you go to the smallest room in your house,
Mm-hmm.
which you go there for 15 minutes twice a day, and in that smallest room in the house, you've read for 30 minutes, that means that you will read one book a month. So going to the smallest room in your house will allow you to read 12 books a year, which will put you so far ahead of everybody else, right? You
Yep.
say, wow, I never figured it that way. Well, here's another thing. Of the people that are reading one book a month, how many of those people are reading books for entertainment or books for self-help, for personal growth?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a different story, because most of the books that are written for entertainment.
True.
So the books for self-help really put you in a position to be even further ahead. Does it mean that you shouldn't read for entertainment? Sure, I don't care. But if you read for self-help, you're growing that person in the mirror, right? And
So
that's
true.
that's going to set you apart from all those other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear people say, well, I don't have time to read. Really? Really? I can tell you a story about the smallest room in your house. Now you have time to read. Come on,
I've never heard it called the smallest room in your house, and I love it. I'm going to have to take that phrase. Is that your Southern charm coming through there?
In the South, you can say bless your heart, and then you can say anything. I'm
I
from
know.
the North, but I learned that anyways down here. So
Oh,
my
I
dog,
love it.
yeah,
Oh, I love it.
my dog
Okay.
is two
So,
syllables.
and it doesn't have to be reading. It could be any sort of self-improvement. You said playing the piano, right?
Absolutely,
Some
absolutely.
people learn to meditate and they make a big practice of making sure the meditation occurs in whatever form that looks like. Some people
Absolutely.
cook. You also garden. So you, in addition to reading and learning every day, you actively go out and you garden.
Yeah.
You're also a builder. You tinker. Do you still tinker, or did you just do that as?
I used to tinker.
Yeah.
I teach people. I say, I started out at 8 years old or 9 years old as an airplane manufacturer. Building model airplanes and trying to sell them to kids that didn't want them. But I do different things. And try to keep the mind sharp. But I love I come from a farm, so.
Mhm.
The thing about farming and about gardening is that you cannot fool Mother Nature. That if you plant corn, don't go out there and expect asparagus. It will not come. Okay. And same, you don't sit in your yard with vinegar and oil waiting for your tomatoes that you just planted yesterday. So, once you come to understand that life has a cycle and plants have a cycle, then it sort of gives you a sort of understanding of why everything doesn't go perfect in your life. Why when I pull out onto the highway, why don't all the lights turn green? They don't, right? And I get upset with it. But what do? I come and I stop at the stop sign or stop light and wait till it turns green and then I go. So, but some people will not pull out on the highway of life until all the lights are green. Isn't that interesting? And they paralyze themselves because they're waiting for things to get convenient. And life is not convenient. Life is life. You'll have obstacles, you'll have detours in your life all the time.
Okay, that is the best word I've ever heard used, convenient. Because we talk about ease, and when things are going well, that's usually feeling easy and any obstacle can be overcome and you've got all these ideas to try. Yet you're right. When the focus is on convenience, thinking it's supposed to be easy, that's, I think, where that all those lights turn red and they're never going to change. It's going to be that one light that everything changes except for your left turn signal.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again, right?
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So if I'm out there and I'm listening, and maybe it's even me it's me sometimes contemplating, oh, I'm on my little pot of pity. Come over and join my pity party. Let's figure out, nobody wants to play with me. Guess what? Start playing and people will find us. And
Yeah.
people will find us. And, I'm trying to think, there was another story. Oh, I actually really like the tinkering story of the rocket.
Yeah.
Because this was something you do this in your spare time. It was something you saw and then you just did it. Well, and actually your miniature sawmill. Okay. So everybody who's listening, there are two stories I'm going to ask Dr. Liposky to tell because it's creative play that actually served a purpose, whether he knew it at the time, and he didn't know it at the time, but looking back, he sees how there was some learning involved and some of those lessons. Will you tell us those two stories?
Well, the first one was, the one about the sawmill was my dad took me to a sawmill back then, and I watched him cut the trees down or cut the boards up and everything. And so I went up to the attic and I had an erector set and I decided to make my own sawmill. Well, I didn't have I used string for the belts and I did all my thing, but now how do I get logs? Well, I went down and my mother canned and she had wax, paraffin wax. So I snuck in and I got all her wax that she saved and I melted it down into these logs. And I had an old gear and I used that as the saw blade. And of course I turned it on and boy, it really did a great job, except there was pieces of wax flying all over the place. And I did what a little boy would do when you have wax falling all over the place and sticking to everything. I just left the room and went downstairs and grabbed a sandwich. Of course, my mother, politely, as a great lady she was, said, "Don't you ever touch my wax again," But the thing was, you see, I could look at something and take it apart, and I didn't have all the tools in my mind. I didn't know how the blades worked and how the wood cut. All I saw was something that looked like it was running over those boards and making them all into nice boards. The rocket ship story was just, this was back in the era when we were going to send people to the moon. And there was a period of time when we didn't have rocket ships, okay? And so with my erector set, I just decided I'm going to build myself a rocket. And so I went up and I built this frame, which was my rocket. And I went up and went down, got a sandwich and got a little drink and got up in my rocket ship and I took off for the moon, except I fell asleep before it went very long and I laid in there. But you think about it, in my mind, before we even had rockets, I was in my cockpit and I was flying to the moon. And I made sure it was going to be safe because I took a sandwich and some pop with me, and the other one was I built model airplanes and then I thought it'd be fun to have fighters. So I put matches on the wings and I lit them and threw them out the window. And I thought that was really great as the planes crashed in the yard. And then my dad didn't know what all these X's were burned out in holes in his yard. But my dad, they encouraged me to create, and they didn't say, don't do that. They didn't want the lawn burned and they didn't want different things happen, but they never held back. And it's interesting because as I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money on our farm, and we didn't have a lot of money for machine, and we didn't. If we couldn't grow it, we didn't eat it. That's the way it was. Okay. Well, we didn't have machinery, so my dad would take me to the machine stores, and he'd talk to the owner of the dealer, and I'd be there with a piece of paper drawing the machine. And then my dad was handy in mechanics and that, and he would make parts, and we would make our own machines. And our neighbors couldn't understand because we had machines that we used in our field, but they didn't recognize the brand, right? Because they were the colors that we painted them was what paint we had laying around, right? So we had, rainbow equipment that did the job. But you see, that was innovation. That was growing. That was my education. I was learning to look at something, take it apart in my mind, put it back together, make it better, whatever. And that's what I did. So.
And, and it's really interesting because, and I'm going to poo-poo screens for a minute. Granted, we're on one. People may be watching us on a screen, and they're definitely going to be listening from a touch screen something later. The thing is, until we get to a certain age, if all we're doing is looking at a screen, our brains don't have to work very hard.
That's
and
right.
we lose, and this is my opinion, we lose our resourcefulness. And I watch my nieces and my nephews, and I watch how my son is when I stick it, when he gets a chance to sit in front of a screen versus when he's not sitting in front of a screen. And the manners are different. The mannerisms are different. The questions that are asked are different. The way we approach the world is different. It goes from, well, it's time for you to feed me, mama, to, hey, I'm hungry. I should probably go see what there is to eat. And it's just in that little instance that we are programming and reinforcing something we may not like 5 and 10 years down the road, when we want our kids to get a job, when we want them to have different sets of skills that are more life ready.
Well, there's in one of the, I think it's the second book, I wrote a chapter called "You're Always on Stage."
This is a great chapter, everybody. That's where I'm at right now. So yes. Mhm.
Well, it's because children learn without you even talking to them. They learn by just watching mom and dad, and how mom and dad react and respond to one another sometimes can affect how that young person will respond to their spouse or to their, it's like, how do they recognize that respect? But uh, we learn when someone comes. Example, I was up at the garden shop, and I was upset because I had dandelions in the daffodils that I bought. Okay, and I was complaining to the little girl there, I have dandelions in my daffodils. Now she probably thought I was the old man Daffy to begin with, because I was in my garden clothes, right?
Right.
And so people seeing that would probably say, oh, that old guy, he's complaining about dandelions in his daffodils. Give him some more daffodils and get out of line. But here's the thing. A young man, 16 years old, saw not the old man with dandelions in his daffodils. The old man saw Dr. Liposky. And suddenly, the old man with dandelions in his daffodils could affect the decisions that young man makes in his life. Now that's not presumptive. He had to make a decision. Are all doctors that way? Are doctors jerks that when they're in their office, they're the doctor, but when they go out, they're jerks? And would he say, man, I don't know whether I want to do something like that? You see? So I was on stage, and all I was an old man with dandelions in my daffodils. You see? So we are always on stage, whether it's me walking down the street, whether it's a dad walking with his son, whether it's a mom hugging her daughter, whether it's the teacher. How many young people become teachers because they like their teacher, you see? And that teacher then was on stage and affected the lives and the decisions of that young person. So we all have, we're always on stage. I look at our professional athletes that they're very successful, but they have an influence on all these young kids.
They do.
And the chances of that young kid becoming a professional athlete is very, very small, but they still look up to them. They look up to their minister, they look up to the doctor, to their parents, to their grandparents. So we have a tremendous responsibility to our children, to the people around us, to make sure that when we are on stage, that we give the best performance we can give to help these young people.
Oh, I think that is amazing. And, something that my grandpa always modeled, he never said this. These are my words articulating his actions, where I'm going to do the same thing, the right thing, whether people are looking or not. Because I don't know, because I have to be accountable to myself first. And, my grandpa's, he was very, very religious also. And he knew that he had to be accountable to himself and to his God. And I think that is brilliant and wonderful. And it's something that I still remember. It's the first thing I do. I'm like, oh, there's as simple as a piece of trash. Oh, there's a piece of trash on the sidewalk down the street from my house. I can walk by it, or I can walk by and I can pick it up. And that picking up sends a signal to everybody else. The people who never see the trash think we have a great neighborhood. The people who did see the trash and then see it gone know somebody did it. The people who actually saw me do it sees that I care.
That's right.
And that I'm doing things because it's the right thing.
You're setting an example.
Yes.
There's three things that are part of the legacy that from Grandpa and Andy in the book, and that's three things that I wanted our children to learn: know the difference between right and wrong, and always choose right. Number two, be responsible for your actions, be accountable. And the third thing is never quit learning, always be a student, but strive to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And if they come away with those three things, there's nothing but success in front of them. The moment they choose wrong over right, they're in jeopardy. The moment they don't take responsibility, they're in jeopardy. And the moment they quit learning, that they quit growing. You see. So if we can teach those principles to our children, their potential is unlimited, and their success is just as much as they want. It's just out there for them.
And it takes more time. It takes more time to be that model, to set the stage, to figure it out, to understand all the pieces that would be included to make that happen. Yet, even though it takes more time up front, it takes way less time later. And it makes number two, as a parent and a spouse and a boss and an employer and a business owner, way easier. It is a lot easier to go, yes, I can be responsible for these people who I know I've taken the time to show how to problem solve, to understand what our expectations are, to know what's going on, and give them a sense of purpose in their roles, which of course then also radiates out to their family, so they can be choosing right, they can be being responsible at home, and that they can be also always learning and creating that opportunity to learn in their families too. So it radiates out, doesn't it, Dr. Liposky?
It does. You don't really realize how many people you touch, even the ones you don't even know.
That's right.
You're touching. Kids are watching, parents are watching, people are watching.
Yep.
We
We are at the end of our show. Is there something that is really on your heart or your mind that you wanted to share that we haven't really talked about yet, but that we could squeeze in?
Well, just success is a decision, and that decision comes from within. And don't be afraid to fail. The most successful people in the world are the ones who failed the most, but never quit. Never quit. Believe in yourself, and you got success all over you.
Thank you for being with us today. Okay, ladies, gentlemen, you know what? I can't wait to actually go back and watch the show to get the program notes out to you, because I do that for you every single day on Tuesdays, right after the live shows. And this is going to be great because, anyway, remember, I could go on and on. I'm going to link to the two books that Dr. Liposky wrote, Grandpa and Andy, and it's not what I know, it's how I learned it. The other thing to remember, listen to the words that were shared today. Go back, rewind, move that slider back a little bit, re-listen to the parts that really hit home for you just one extra time, and then save this one. This is an episode, a program worth saving on those days where we need to pick me up, on those days where we know it might be hard, on those days, and even on the days where we're really ecstatic and excited and everything is going our way, because we know we've been practicing, we know we've been acting in alignment with the things that we believe for ourselves and how we're showing up in this world. Thank you. You guys will find all of the program notes for this program. It's program 90 on voiceofboldbusiness.com/P90. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 90. You can also search Investing in Our Tomorrow, Results Today. You've listened, you've watched. Dr. Liposky's wisdom is timeless and very timely. Make sure you subscribe and rate our program. Get the next one already queued up in your listening queue. The next time you turn on your iPod, your phone, wherever you listen on iHeartRadio and iTunes would be great. Your experiences define what it means to be a leader today. We actually talked about that indirectly a lot. And it's bold to go after solutions, to take actions, and to make sound decisions. We want to know from you. How do you invest in your tomorrow and still get some results today?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.